thank the organizing committee for giving me the opportunity to talk about Hypogaeum C at Venosa, which is a part of a PhD research conducted by whom speaking to you under the supervision of Professor Vincenzo Fiocchi Nicolai at the Pontifical Institute of Christian Archaeology. The presence of nucleo privileged inhumation within the Christian burial areas in late antiquity and early Middle Ages is a topic that has aroused debates and stimulated studies. The explorations and analysis of the topography of underground Christian cemeteries, in particular those of Rome, more numerous and better studied, have shown how, in first time, graves are generally uniform at the typological level on the model of tomb a loculo, on the basis of an egalitarianism that constitutes an identity element of the new Christian religion. Later, starting from the central decades of the 4th century and after Constantinian age, was developed a tendency to differentiate the burials with the creation of cubicles or negative architectures that intend to reproduce the plans of the mausoleums of open-area cemeteries. It was done in underground areas, also in the topographical sense, throughout the creation of areas in which we observe a density of sepulchral installations greater than that observed in the rest of the catacomb. This often created aesthetic problems with the structures, leading to study new structural solutions in order to contain a high number of inhumates in a relatively small space. However, this happened for a specific reason: the will of a part of the Christian community to carve out a physical space near venerated tombs in order to obtain from the same bodies buried in them protection and intercession with God, as evidenced by various epigraphic testimonies. The characteristics of these funerary areas were codified by Reckmans during a 1986 conference on privileged inhumations in the West between the 4th and the 8th centuries, and they were intensive use of space, even at the cost of aesthetic difficulties, construction of new tombs leaning against the previous ones, raising of the vault of tunnels of cubicles, emptying of the oldest tombs, and realization of new cemetery regions near the venerated burials. The aforesaid characteristics seem to describe those of the small sepulchral nucleus, the so-called Hypogaeum C of Venosa. Venosa is a small town located in Piedmont area near Tavoliere delle Puglie, still active today, and a hub of great importance in Roman times along the Tyrrhenian Adriatic Ridge. It is positioned at a point of connection between Pre-Apennines Lucan Hills and Apulian Adriatic Belt, and is famous for being the birthplace of poet Quintus Orazio Flacco. After a period of crisis at the end of the 4th century, evidenced by an early appearance of burials in urbe, which is a typical phenomenon of the urban structure of early medieval cities, these cities lived a period of rediscovered splendor, as evidenced by the construction of an imposing sacred area just beyond the urban perimeter dedicated to the Trinity. On the same direction on which the Trinity complex stands, continuing in the northeast direction, we find the gentle slope of Maddalena Hill that houses an extraordinary series of Hypogean rooms destined for a funerary use. The hill hosts a series of small hypogea of modest dimensions, catalogued and studied during the last century by the greatest scholar of Venosian antiquities, Cesare Colafemmina, and they were next to a large catacomb complex dedicated to the faithful of Jewish community, particularly active in the city in the late antiquity and early Middle Ages and beyond, and also to a catacomb reserved for believers of Christian religion. Among these hypogea, the object of this intervention is the Hypogaeum C, a cave of natural origin located along the northeast flank of Maddalena Hill, identified by Colafemmina, whose position was discovered from a sketch left by the same scholar to Professor Donatella Nuzzo of the University of Bari, whom I thank for having provided me with a copy. The cave is composed, what you see is the upper floor, The cave is composed of two superimposed floors. The lower one, not shown here, explored during the last century by Colafemina, is now inaccessible due to an impressive collapse of stone that obstructed the entrance and has irremediably compromised the structure. Even the upper floor shows obvious signs of structural failure, but an autopsy examination carried out by whom speaks to you has allowed to delineate the topographical profile. This is a natural cave readapted and expanded for a funeral purpose, as evidenced by the tombs made on the floor of the Hypogaeum, appreciable only in the niche B, C, D and E, unlike what happened in the niche A and F. The niche A was affected by structural failures resulting from the effect of external weather and also by a sandy consistency of tufaceous soil, which was due to the activities of rehabilitation of the environment as stall of flocks. The niche F has undergone an impressive collapse of lithic material that has obstructed the passage to the lower floor and had also destroyed a good part of the burials housed in it. The passage to the lower floor were already built in antiquity through the breaking of its floor plan and the opening of an oculus. The niche marked with the letter D was the first to be built and the largest of the 6 niches. It is placed at the center of the back wall in a prominent position and perpendicular to the entrance of the atrium. This niche houses 7 tombs. The 2 central ones are positioned longitudinally to the niche itself, unlike the other 5, 3 on one side and 2 on the other, placed in a more canonical manner in a perpendicular way. From this niche starts the topographic development of the Hypogaeum, as can be seen from the sense of the heats of big cake used to expand the environment that radially depart from the bottom, expanding the sepulchral area towards the sides. The niche B and C on the east side and the E on the west side were obtained in a second time. The niche A on the east side and the F on the west were created as a further expansion of the environment, and the niche F will subsequently be accessed on the lower floor as already mentioned. Moreover, at the main niche D, 7 other tombs, today partially destroyed, were added in a second time. This will be bounded by shoulder boards made by saving portions of tuff in the excavation, as is also done for all the tombs of the Hypogaeum, according to a consolidated and recurring pattern. This development, outlined briefly, results in the creation of a sepulchral environment that gravitates around the niche D, which is the fulcrum of the entire topography. To this niche was already recognized an evident role of preeminence in antiquity, as demonstrated by the leaning on it further burials and the creation of inhumation spaces close to it. Similar phenomena, if in much wider context and of a greater importance, can be found in numerous examples in the arrangement of the catacombs in the wall Orbis Christianus Antiquus. This is the already mentioned custom rooted in the first generation of Christian faithful to bury their own dear or be buried near a venerated tomb, a strong but not always fulfilling desire, as Fabrizio Visconti said. The present case certainly does not contemplate the presence of a holy tomb. The written sources do not mention the presence of the body of a saint for Venosa, nor the archaeological indicators of the Hypogaeum C seem to refer to hypotheses of this type. However, for the case of Venosa, we can speak of prestigious burials, following a relatively recent line of interpretation. The prestige in this case study is not to be found in the use of a particular monumental form or of a sepulchral type different from the surrounding context, as in the evident will to coagulate around a group of few burials, a funerary area that extends to several subjects wishing to link their own otherworldly destiny to that of a primal nucleus of particular relevance. This will be reiterated at a later date, together with the partial destruction of the niche F and the tombs pertinent to it, in order to create a further Hypogaean sepulchral space. In order to examine the specific case, it is necessary to glance at the network of small underground hypogeal or semi-hypogeal environments hosted by Maddalena Hill, and which constitutes a unique case in the panorama of late Antique and early medieval tombs in southern Italy. There are small caves with the common characteristics that are well recognizable. They are small in size, contain few graves, and all have a tomb or a set of tombs in a privileged position compared to the others. This happens in the case of Hypogaeum B, where on the back wall we can see a large arch that highlights the presence of different burials whose number and type are now undervalued due to a collapse of lithic material from the vault that hides them from the view. Additionally, it happens in the case of Hypogaeum named Lauridia, now lost, but visited up to the 16th of last century and also confusedly indicated by Colafemina in this sketch, with the name Lauridia is not clear here, where the Archaeology 8, placed at the center of the major side of an elbow ambulance, hosts the burial of Marcellus, patronus of the city of Venosa, as indicated in an epigraph transcribed by Frankel and then lost, but published in the Corpus Inscriptionum Judeorum and in the Corpus of Jewish Inscriptions of Western Europe, dating the second quarter of the 5th century in the years of Valentinian III. In front of this burial, a double arcosolium houses the tombs of Faustina and her husband Ausenius, also referred to as Pater kai Patron tes Poleos. Unlike what is found in Hypogaeum C, these two cases mention to present of a privileged burial representing the fulcrum of the sepulchral area, but does not determine the expansion of the area itself. This circumstance raises questions concerning the identity of the inhumates of the niche D. To address this question, the current level of research is limited to suggest hypotheses that will be verified through an in-depth study and research, which, however, move in space made narrow by the neglect that hid the monuments presented, in some cases even their oblivion, as for Hypogaeum Lauridia. There is scarcity of reliable archaeological indicators because of their continuous and uninterrupted use for different purposes, which is from studying the crews to queries, extraction, or to fascious material. Cesare Colafemina suggested that at the base of the creation of such a widespread network of underground funerary environments, it was customary to equip each collegium with its own cemetery or the will of a particularly wealthy family to rest their mortal remains under a single roof. As for the Hypogaeum C, this will seem to be strengthened by the virtue of a specific devotion or consideration reserved for the deaths of the niche D, but about their identity nothing more can be said. Another issue of concern is the fate of the deaths of the Hypogaeum C, a question not obvious as regards the Venosian reality, particularly with reference to the context of Maddalena Hill, where we observe a mixture of sepulchres destined for Jewish and Christian communities. Certainly, by belonging to the Jewish community of the tombs of the Hypogaeum Lauridia, we can venture the hypothesis that is also for the Hypogaeum B and C. The common characteristics, medium-height workmanship, small dimensions, presence of the core of privileged tombs, suggest the same Jewish metrics. In this case, the custom of creating privileged sepulchral areas would assume a different value, which would be borrowed from the Christian tradition but declined horizontally according to a pattern dictated by the will not to receive protection or an intercession from Holy Body, but to be linked even in the afterlife to the image of a family in particular, distinguished for its role within the thriving Jewish community of Venosa. Regarding the date, the archaeological data are almost non-existent. Here, the most probable hypothesis seems to place the creation of the first nucleus of the Hypogaeum C to the first half of the 5th century, the same years in which Marcello, Faustina, and Ausenius lived, and in the same years who saw the action in Venosa of Bishop Stefano, A prelate was signed in the Roman councils of the early 5th century and was the protagonist of the season of great economic prosperity for the town, reverberated as well as in the social life of the city and in the renewed impulse given to public and ecclesiastical buildings, which has as its symbol in the sacred area dedicated to the Trinity. An action that seems to have benefited also from the contribution of the Jewish community. Between the two religious communities must have been a high level of interaction, as demonstrated not only by the choice to elect Maddalena Hill as common burial place, but also by osmosis of devotional and funeral practices, in particular the installation of privileged tombs inside burial space. Thanks for your attention.